Everyone else, we're going to get started with the meeting, and I'll ring it accordingly. Good afternoon, Rotarians, guests, and employees from Metroparks. Thanks so much for having us here today. We couldn't have had better weather and such a great place to meet, so thank you. Great turnout as well. And also a great turnout for our Rotary on the Road, so this is super exciting. Now would be a good time for those of you that have your phones out to check into social media. Let them know you're here at the Glass City Metropark and at a great Rotary meeting, and then please turn your phones down. Today, I'd like to ask Sarah Collins and Stephanie White to come up to the podium. Sarah will be doing the invocation, and Stephanie will be doing the pledge for us.
A prayer for unity. In this century and in any century, our deepest hope, our most tender prayer is that we learn to listen. May we listen to one another in openness and mercy. May we listen to the plants and animals and with wonder and respect. May we listen to our own hearts in love and forgiveness. May we listen to God in quietness and awe. And in this listening, which is boundless in its beauty, may we find the wisdom to cooperate with a healing spirit, a divine spirit, who beckons us into peace and community and creativity. We do not ask for a perfect world, but we do ask for a better world. We ask for deep listening.
Thank you, Sarah and Stephanie. As we begin the meeting here today, I'd like to thank Browning Kuzno, as they are the sponsor for our meetings this month, and Brent Kuzno. So thank you very much, Brent. I know I saw several guests come in as I was up at the front door, so if you could stand at your table with your guests and introduce them, as we do not have a floor mic today.
President City, I'd like to introduce Brad Mish. He's 3 weeks with Dunbar in our business development organization.
Good afternoon, Madam President. I'm Shannon Moore, and I'm proud to bring two guests to you today. We have Ms. Stacy Fowler, who's the Northwest Toledo Minority Business Assistance Center Regional Director. And we also have Alicia, who is the owner of Time Away Resorts, owner and CEO. So we're excited to have them enjoy this. Please introduce yourselves.
Thank you. Sharon.
Cindy and my fellow Rotarians, many of you know my husband Tom. I'm thankful to have him with me today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming, and it's, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Awesome. This is great. Thank you all for coming today. At this time, we're actually ready to get on with our presentation. So if Mike Noble could come up here. Mike is the environmental chair for the district this year, the 6600 district, and he's been a member of the Toledo Rotary Club since 2017. And he will be introducing our speaker today, Dave Zenk.
Greetings, everybody. So my name is Mike Noble. I'm serving as the Rotary District 6600 Environmental Sustainability Chair, and I'm a Toledo Rotarian. I'm encouraged by what I've seen we can accomplish when we as Rotarians work together with each other, with other clubs and districts, and with great partners like the Metroparks. It's my honor today to introduce Dave Zenk. Dave is Executive Director of Metroparks Toledo, the 2020 Gold Medal recipient for Best Large Park System in America. He's a dynamic and accomplished professional with over 15 years of demonstrated performance in the park field and years of experience in the private sector as a business owner. He is a skillful project manager who is passionate about leadership, quality service delivery, and developing strategies that are powerful enough to change a region. At Metroparks Toledo, he is directly responsible for over $100 million in total assets, 200 employees, and $60 million annual budget. He oversaw the development of the agency's current comprehensive plan and completed a goal to place Metropark within 5 miles of every resident in Lucas County. He was responsible for securing more than $70 million of grants, which has allowed Metroparks to expand its reach across the country and doubled its visitation to more than 7 million visits per year. Under his supervision as Deputy Director, then Executive Director, Metroparks grew from 9 to 19 parks, adding the first new Metropark in 4 decades. In that time, the park system has introduced new programs including outdoor skills instruction, kayak launches, a rock climbing area, tree climbing, a single track trail for mountain bikes, and most recently, the country's first public treehouse village. This growth has been acknowledged with over 60 state and national awards, making Metroparks the fastest growing and most recognized park agency in the country. In the county. In the country, yes. Glass City Riverwalk, a $200 million reimagining of the Toledo riverfront, is now underway, along with planned upgrades to parks and trails across the county. There it is, the county, not country. Dave holds a Master's of Public Administration degree specializing in organizational development from Bowling Green University and a Bachelor of Science degree from The Ohio State University. He is a recent 20 Under 40 awardee, serves on the Ohio Wildlife Council, Mercy Health Board of Directors, and is a founding member of the Toledo Regional Equity and Inclusion Council, and serves on numerous other community boards and committees. Join me in welcoming Dave Zenk.
Thank you. So in full transparency, I'm not sure where that bio came from, and I hope none of you listened to it because it's essentially my entire presentation. Thank you for being here. I hope that this isn't the first time that many of you have been here. This is your newest Metropark, though, Glass City Metropark, and a lot of what I'm going to talk to you about today is really the context that this park is in. But I want to start with a little bit of basic groundwork so you understand really who Metroparks is as an agency. So firstly, Metroparks does 2 things on your behalf. We conserve and sometimes create the region's most significant natural resources. And then secondly, we find really creative experiences to connect people into those resources. We really believe at the end of the day that people value what they experience. So if we create really robust, meaningful experiences, individuals that benefit from those experiences are really more likely to support conservation initiatives around the region that we pursue. Secondly, then, our vision, the vision of Metroparks is, I'm going to talk to you a lot about the work and the projects and things that we specifically do around the region, but at the end of the day, one of the things that we really aspire to is packaging all of this work, communicating all of this work in such a way that at the end of the day, it not only has a meaningful impact in terms of the quality of life of this region, but that fundamentally it's a tool in our region's kit about how we talk about our region, about how we feel about our region, and really fundamentally changing the identity of the region. That's what this work is really all about that we're pursuing together. So as mentioned, Metroparks became the fastest growing park district in the country over the last few years, as we have opened 10 new parks in just 8 years. Part of the plan here was to really expand the footprint of Metroparks and to some degree change fundamentally who in the community we are serving. We're going to be 94 years old as an institution here in a couple weeks, and for the better part of that 100 years, we have pretty much been a western rural Lucas County facing organization, and we really, about 5 years ago, set forth a goal and a strategy to fundamentally start changing that, literally placing parks in portions of our community that we hadn't been serving before, not unlike this one here in East Toledo. So by the numbers, if you look at our organization, firstly, we really think that this plan is actually working. We've doubled our visitation in just 5 years, now growing to, this year will be over 7 million visits across our park system. And we think that's actually a really conservative number because we account that by vehicle counters. So we're not counting any pedestrian access at all. So those of you that walk into the parks or ride your bikes in, we're not even capturing that. So we think that 7 million number, as big as it is, we think that's fairly conservative. Call out here as well, we're so thankful and humbled by the amount and the robust nature of the community support that we receive. Volunteerism is one of the biggest trends that we see in our organization. We see about over 3,000 individual volunteers every year commit really significant portions of their personal time to supporting and operating and running our organization. We'll be in the doorstep of 1 million hours of community volunteerism this year. So to put that in perspective, that's about 20% of the overall manpower it takes to run our organization comes from volunteers. And they're supporting us in just about every way possible, from some of the volunteers that were out here running the programs and the climbing walls, to helping keep the parks clean and safe, even patrolling the parks with our rangers. So really in all forms. I often get asked, what's the most visited park? And most of you know Wildwood. That will probably never change. Wildwood by itself sees over 1.5 million visits every year. Pearson out in Oregon is number 2. And the third one will probably surprise you. It's the Botanical Gardens. And if you paid attention over the last 5 or 6 years or so, the Botanical Gardens transitioned from city ownership to Metroparks ownership, and at that time, we kind of launched a commitment to the community to say we will certainly continue maintaining and preserving the botanical integrity of that site, the horticultural value, but we really wanted to place some other experiences and opportunities there that gave even more reasons for people to visit, families and youth in particular. And so that plan has really worked. We've doubled the visitation there, and now it's one of the top 3 busiest parks that we have. So through this growth today, your park system consists of 19 individual parks. We have over 200 miles of pedestrian trails in our region, on a doorstep of 13,000 acres. And again, part of this plan was to create a park system that was 5 miles from every resident in the entire county. So no matter where you came to us from today, I guess unless it was Perrysburg or someplace out of the county, you live within 5 miles of a Metropark. And we accomplished that in North Toledo, when we opened Manhattan Marsh. So if you take all the work and the activity that we do around the region, you can really summarize it by placing it into these 3 buckets of activity. So firstly, at the end of the day, as I started, we are a conservation-oriented agency. Anything that we do in this region really stems from conservation. Even projects like this that are in a very urban industrial context are still at their core a conservation initiative. Secondly then, part of our plan are to continue to expand access and connectivity. So we have 19 individual parks today with more on the way. Part of the plan was to get this robust portfolio of parks spread across the region, and then secondly come back and physically connect every one of those parks to each other with a multi-purpose trail network. So we're well on the way of pursuing that goal. And then lastly, the experiences. Experiences like the climbing wall that you saw out here, or kayaking, archery, mountain biking, the country's largest publicly operated treehouse village. These are the experiences that we implement to connect with people and bring them into nature so that they are supporting and understanding the value and the significance of conservation. So an example of a typical year's worth of work for Metropark, up on the slide now, is what we accomplished in 2020. So in that year, we opened 3 new parks, including this park that we're in, a park next to Oak Openings in Manhattan Marsh, which was the park that made it possible for our community to have a Metropark within 5 miles of every resident. The Canaley Treehouse Village, which if you haven't been, is a really incredible overnight experience in the heart of Oak Openings that was entirely supported by private philanthropy in our community through our partner, the Metroparks Foundation. And then lastly, we finished the year by extending the region's longest multi-purpose trail, the Wabash Cannonball Trail, by 6 miles purposely out of the county to welcome non-Lucas County residents into Oak Openings and the rest of our park system. So that was 2020, and as stated, that work and kind of the robust nature of everything else that we have going on is starting to really realize some national attention. So Metroparks is now considered the best park district in the country amongst large cities. So this is no small feat. We were out competing in places like Dallas and Denver to bring this recognition to Northwest Ohio. So we've got... Thank you. And as you'll see, and I'll weave this through some of the rest of my remarks, but a lot of the intent behind this type of recognition is commensurate with that vision that I talked about. It's starting to change regional identity. It's leveraging these investments that you are all supporting and the community is supporting to fundamentally change the way the rest of the country thinks about and talks about Northwest Ohio. That's really what our work is all about. So I want to transition. Everything that I just talked about was really a little bit backward looking. recognizing some of the things we've just recently accomplished. I want to talk to you a little bit now and transition now about what we see as the next few years worth of work, and really a big part of the next chapter, we think, of reinventing this community in some ways. And many of you are actually part of what I'm going to talk about next. Through the 22nd Century Committee, which ultimately developed the Downtown Toledo Master Plan. One of the ideas and concepts in that, as that process and that group of people came together to benchmark the cities that we compete against, places like Boise and Tulsa and Des Moines and Grand Rapids, one of the things that process really showed us is that we were using, quite literally, our region's most significant natural asset, which is the public ownership of property on the banks of the Maumee River downtown, in fundamentally some of the worst ways. And this is just a short period of time ago. This is 2017, 2018. We started to really realize and question, why as a community are we accepting storing our bulk road salt on the bank of the Maumee River? What is with all these abandoned warehouses? And if you had traveled around in the periphery of all this project, you saw really nothing but commercial real estate signs. There was not much going on. This chunk of property, nearly 100 acres, had sat here essentially vacant for the past 2 decades. And so really this process started to identify we were really underperforming in this space. As a community, we were not looking at this and figuring out how do we use this as a tool to reinvent ourselves in the way virtually every other community that we compete against had done. And these benchmarks showed us that 20% of these other communities was comprised in their downtown urban core in open space, in parks, in vibrant activities. We weren't doing it. We were 2% at that point in time, and this is just in 2017. So from that recognition came this goal. And what I'm going to talk to you about now is we are pursuing, as we speak, constructing the country's best riverwalk. That's what flowed from this plan. Many of you were involved and engaged in that. And this is how we're implementing it. This project that I'll talk to you about now is about creating 300 acres of new open space on both sides of the river in the core of downtown. So one of the things that we're really thrilled about is this is connecting 6 individual neighborhoods down here in a way that this community hasn't seen. And we're all guilty of it. I still am. When we talk about downtown, we pretty much mean, and we have in our minds, the central business district on the other side of the river, right? We're all guilty of it. I still am. And we certainly were never talking about East Toledo when we said downtown. This project is really about changing that. It's about sort of blurring how we've thought about our community in the past. It's about stitching 6 individual neighborhoods together with a 5-mile multi-purpose trail. It's about embedding ecological and conservation initiatives. So in this project, we're not talking about planting a few trees. We're talking about creating urban forests in places where, frankly, they've never existed before. We'll have all types of water-oriented reclamation projects and wetlands that will be implemented, upland prairie habitat. And then the other interesting thing about this project is that this is really an economic development initiative at the same time. Because if we do this right, in the way that we know we can, what do parks do well? They've got layers of benefits. We can talk about the ecological benefits, all these things. But at the end of the day, parks do one thing incredibly well, and that's they bring people together. I told you already that we see about 7 million visits across our park system this year. And if we do what we're talking about doing here, there will be several million people a year that are on this property. And if parks do one thing well, and that's they bring people, what do people need? People need businesses to serve them. Businesses need employees. Employees need places to live. So at the end of the day, this also becomes a hand-in-glove economic project as well, as we've already started to see. So Metroparks invested $5 million in this first phase. And what that did was attracted an out-of-town developer to come here in East Toledo and place a $50 million mixed-use residential development right next door. And from his mouth, he said, I will do this if Metroparks is my neighbor. And so what you will see is that continued hand-in-glove economic model as buildings get renovated and businesses start to fold into this project. And you'll see that end up being, at the end of the day, about a 10-to-1 multiplier to the public, from the public investment, which creates these really active, vibrant public spaces. So this is the vision. This is what we're creating. Again, it's both sides of the river, from bridge to bridge to bridge. So think upriver at the base of the Anthony Wayne or High Level Bridge, where Middle Grounds is located, across the MLK Bridge, and all the way down to the Craig Street Bridge on both sides of the river. And this project is happening. It's underway. This first phase has been, so far, a wild success. While it's just the tip of the iceberg, we have welcomed thousands of youth and families. We've seen neighbors from across the street coming to recreate in the banks of the river. We've seen sledding events that brought 1,000 kids on a really crummy, cold February, sledding with, you could still barely see the grass still creeping through, small concerts, program events this past Sunday. We had a great outdoor expo event down here, just really encouraging the use and activation of the riverfront in ways that we haven't seen before. And again, as it relates to leveraging all of this public investment and this activity to attract additional attention and change the narrative about Northwest Ohio and Toledo, here's a couple examples. So actually in February, there was a writer from Forbes that came into town and met with Metroparks and the Art Museum. And these are just some excerpts. I don't know if anybody saw his article in Forbes magazine, but this was his takeaway. He said, firstly, this is a model, what our community is pursuing right now on the banks of the river. This is a model from his perspective that should be replicated nationwide. He went on to say the connection of everything I just talked about, the connection between conservation, between business and economic vitality, between recreation, and between health. The connection and intersection of all of those things is not a special interest project. These are not a nice to have. This is a must have for our community. And again, from his perspective, something that should be replicated nationwide. And perhaps the most compelling here, he concluded his article by saying, if we do this, Toledo's best days aren't in our rearview mirror. They're just a few years away. A bit more locally then, the Blade has written a handful of articles on this project. And their conclusion was, if we do this right and we do what we're talking about doing, this will fundamentally transform the heart of downtown and grow our city. So with our partners, this is another aspect of what we're trying to accomplish. Today, there's 3,500 permanent downtown residents, plus or minus. This project, connected with all of the other development and partners that we have, we've got a goal to grow that to 10,000 individual permanent downtown residents as part of this initiative. And part of the way we're doing that is because this initiative will fundamentally supercharge the quality of life in downtown in Northwest Ohio. So the point in sharing those two articles with you is, again, connecting to our vision. Aren't those the types of things that we want people searching up on the internet? When you Google Toledo, we don't want the first article to come up to be about the 2014 water crisis. We want them to see the Forbes article about Toledo's best days are ahead of us, about the energy and excitement that the community has for these types of initiatives. We want that to be a real recruitment tool as we bring new talent into this community. And we want that new talent to be part of all of this energy and excitement. So I'm going to get into a few specific aspects now. So that was all high level, where we're going and what we're trying to accomplish. So under construction as we speak is the next phase of this project. It will wrap up towards the end of this year, and then our crews will come in and put some polishing touches. We'll be opening that next phase in April. And in that phase, these are all things that you'll see. So firstly, if you have time after this presentation, get up on the roof. There's actually an elevated roof deck that you can see everything that I'm about to talk about. But we've got a great new facility there called the Market Hall. We've got a joint venture in place with Poco Piatti. We'll be operating a restaurant and even a small-scale beer garden out of that. Everything will flow from the rest of the park from this facility. So there'll be outdoor dining here, gathering spaces, programming. Our programming team will really take advantage and do a lot of creative things throughout the summer. You can see the outdoor dining areas. Those areas then actually kind of get flipped seasonally. So the same spaces that you'll be dining in the summer, you can be ice skating on in the winter. So a portion of the trail system and the outdoor patio space will actually be refrigerated for ice skating in the winter. You'll see all kinds of gathering locations, fire pits, all types of public art will be woven through this project. There'll be outdoor gathering facilities for warming huts and picnic pavilions spread through this. We're also going to be doing a small-scale campground just adjacent to the marina that's there. So we'll have a handful of overnight accommodations, we'll have RV hookups, and some tent camping platforms as well. One of the things we're really excited about, and you've started to see some glimmers of this to come, but throughout the entire core of downtown, we'll also be implementing adventure play and discovery play. And so the idea here is, think about this 5-mile multi-purpose trail that links these communities together, both sides of the river. The idea is, as you're on that trail, just out for a walk or a bike ride, you're going to happen upon some of these really creative play areas that'll be woven through the landscape. And they're going to be very different from traditional playgrounds, purposely. We want these playgrounds to encourage, in some cases, creative risk-taking. There's a lot of studies across the country right now about the detrimental effect of purposely engineering out all risk in our children's play. So we'll be trying to overcome some of that. Critical thinking. This is also intergenerational play. So this isn't just kindergarten through eighth grade kind of play. We're going to be building some things here that you're all going to want to get up and play in yourselves. So a couple examples of what this looks like. community asked Metroparks to really consider and figure out how we could help provide more public access to swimming. And as you know, we don't do swimming pools, we don't staff lifeguards, but this is what our team, how they interpreted and implemented that feedback. So what you'll have in this next phase is a fully scaled model of the Maumee River and all of its tributaries with treated water that the families can actually get right down in and not only learn, but play. That's a rendering of what is currently under construction. The center part of this park will be a large upland prairie. And in that prairie, we'll be implementing another discovery play area. You can see sort of paths and mazes woven in the prairie, some new, more traditional play elements, creative topography. This is what that will look like. If you came in this way, you probably saw the tips of this play area. And this is a real adventure play area, so you'll see slides on grade and climbing walls, zip lines through this part. The whole play area is centered around the tips that you can just see over the sledding hill there. This is almost a 50-foot tall play structure that individuals and youth and families can get right up in. There's climbing nets and all kinds of structure inside that, slides. You can see the zip lines. And the important thing to note in these renderings is all of this activity, all of this development is still very much embedded in a conservation initiative. You can see in this case, this is part of the forest that we're starting to recreate in this area. So everything I just showed you will be wrapping up again towards the end of this year. We'll be opening it next year. When we do that, we'll roll right into this phase of construction that I'm going to talk about next, which is really on the other side of the river. So spatially think about the bridge that crosses right in front of Owens Corning's campus, all the way down to the MLK bridge. That's what I'm starting to show you here. That will start next year. So most of you know this. This is the space that you see today. This is what physically exists. Again, that's the bridge right in front of Owens Corning campus. And what we're doing here is actually constructing a little bit out into the river. So the river walk on that side will look exactly like what you're seeing here. Separated pedestrian and bicycle lanes, improved access for fishing, get downs to the river so you can grab a sandwich and hang out with family. A lot of access for canoeing and kayaking spread throughout the entire riverfront. The next area I'll show you, this is an area that we're really excited about. So think, now we're closer to the MLK bridge down here. This is right in front of 1 Seagate. Again, existing conditions. You see the cove there. Not a lot going on, some kind of mowed turf areas. Doesn't get a lot of activity currently. This is the access to that location. So if you think about this, when you walk across the MLK bridge, this is what we've got to work with. It's hope you got your tetanus shots if you use it, right? And so we're excited about this because, again, a lot of this project is about moving people around downtown, connecting neighborhoods. So if you wanted to walk back to your office, if you're on the other side of the river, this is all we got for you. But next year we're going to change that because this is the space that it will become. So totally barrier-free access. This rendering is taken from the same perspective. So instead of that rickety set of stairs, you've got a fully barrier-free ramp that curves through this, not only providing that barrier-free access, but creating new opportunities for the community to program these spaces in whatever way they want. So we're showing here, a small-scale outdoor movie night, and you can see we're handling all the area's stormwater really creatively through here. So this will start construction next year. We'll flip to the other side now, just across the street in International Park. Our work will be centered really around the basin, the international basin that's there, the area that's really hardened, a lot of where the flags are. That's the space that I'm talking about. And you'll see a lot of the intent on that side of the river is to really soften the shoreline. We'll be adding a lot of vegetation, boardwalks out into the cove, some elevated areas. So again, you walk over there now, this is what you're seeing. There's an old picnic pavilion and really, frankly, not a lot of reasons to visit this property as it stands today. And this is what our team's come up with to change that. So this is what that space will be again starting next year. So elevated areas to hang out, better connections into the river, some really creative wetlands. And as we work our way around the cove then, you can start to see some of the new infrastructure. We'll be building an actual jetty out into that bay a little bit. We'll provide additional river access and fishing opportunities through that. Same thing, this is what we've got today, and this is what it will be. So in the next 2 years, that's what you'll see. Spatially, this will really represent the third phase. So we're in the first phase. The second phase is what we'll be wrapping up towards the end of the year. The idea here is to roll right out of that, right into the project that I just talked about, and then we'll have 2 more phases left of the rest of International Park to complete and the Vistula corridor from the MLK Bridge to the Craig Street Bridge on that side. So with that, that's my update. Again, thank you for being here. Thank you for making this happen. Again, many of you were part of the group that created this vision, this opportunity. The community overwhelmingly supported this in terms of how we're accomplishing this. This is a real public-private partnership. So in the midst of a global pandemic, the community at a rate of 2 to 1 supported the public funding aspect of this, which essentially creates the first 50%. And our message to the community was, if they were interested in supporting this, Metroparks would earn the second 50%. And we're doing that through state and federal grants and private philanthropy. And again, many of your corporations and businesses have been involved in that way as well. So thank you for making this all happen. My only ask of you today is stay involved. So we have hard hat tours going on to get people excited about what's to come, several a week. So sign up for those. Continue to be members, figure out ways to support the campaign. We need all your continued support. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dave. All this work is so exciting for our community, so we appreciate what you and all the employees of the Metroparks are doing. Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask Dave? You can just stand from your seat, please.
First, thanks for all you do. 2 questions. Number 1, with the new parks, any opportunities for miserable weather cross-country skiing? Number 2, we're going to lose the Lucas County Jail someday, and there's new construction going on along that area. Are there any opportunities for the Metropark to be involved in the Civic Center Mall, which has been underutilized over the years?
Yeah, thank you. So on the cross-country skiing, I think 6 years or so ago, we went all in on cross-country skiing and actually acquired a tracking machine that can lay cross-country ski tracks. We thought, boy, this is going to be a great idea. People are going to love this. I don't think it's snowed since. So yes, we're prepared to do this if it ever snows again. We've got a couple established embark trails out in the Oak Openings corridor and with the Secor expansion, we do have more opportunities. Fingers crossed on some snow. On the Civic Center Mall, so the way we think about these projects is from a regional connectivity perspective. So there's a lot of opportunities, and we think this is kind of a generational type of initiative. But we want to continue to figure out ways to grow and connect this. So most of you know there's a lot of discussion around the warehouse district and middle grounds district and doing some sort of similar project going up Swan Creek. The same thing can be said for the Civic Center Mall. We want to, Jackson that runs there. There's a big central boulevard that runs through there. So really reimagining the entire streetscape and making it more pedestrian friendly now starts to place the Civic Center Mall in a context that can be more meaningful. Because if we take this work and leverage this investment, we reimagine the streets going down that way. Now we've just connected the Civic Center Mall into this whole initiative and makes it part of this bigger framework that we're pursuing as a community. So we've been involved in some of the planning and reimagining that, and we'll obviously continue to look at it and figure out if there's a way for us to support it as it relates to connecting to some of these other initiatives that we're already all in.
Does the Metroparks have any, coming from an organization that does housing and community housing for homeless individuals, so low-income housing, does the Metroparks have any plan to have any kind of role in advocating for rent rates in the, being that a Metropark is going to be within 5 miles, that may spike people's rental rates, especially for some of our community members that cannot afford the cost of living as it is. Do you have any plans on advocating for rent rates not to increase or put it to where somebody can't afford to live near a Metropark?
The short answer is I don't know, but I'll tell you here's what we are doing. Firstly, just across the street here at 815 Front Street, we've got a really large facility that the developer donated to Metroparks, and it was more space than what we needed for an operations shop. So one of the things that we've done is really reached out to any partner that would have us, and the idea here is to create a bit of a new model of community center. Not reinventing the wheel, but really working with partners and providing services to help in whatever way is necessary in the context of this project. So we know there will be potentially some negative impacts to this work. I mean, essentially what you're speaking to is the notion of gentrification. And the idea, part of our work is firstly, we bring in new parks and experiences into these neighborhoods, but we are now just in the process of really learning, meeting our new neighbors, understanding their needs, and so I think we're sort of on the doorstep, if you will, of being able to respond, and we're doing some things that will allow us to prepare to respond and figure out what role we need to have in those things. But I don't know that I have a clear answer for it today. Yes?
So congratulations on your success. That's a very impressive presentation, and you and your staff should be very proud of what you've done for us. The emphasis, of course, is for the parks to take advantage of the river. What I'm thinking of is the reverse of that. How can we notice that folks, for example, people on the river take advantage of the parks? What are your ideas on having slips or dockage available to tourists?
So I will say we spend a lot of time on the river myself, and as a boater, what you see happen is the restaurants are full. The other side of the river is a ghost town unless there's a concert, right? And so part of what we're doing in this next phase, we're talking to some of the partners who are over there about the appropriate quantity of docks, but also rationale for people to want to use them when there's not a concert. What else can we do to activate some of these spaces? So the idea behind even those smaller scale sort of pocket parks, if you will, along this, is to create a little bit more of a robust activation menu of sorts, so that there's reasons for people to visit these spaces when they're not these large regional events. We also, as part of this initiative, just took over the former city-owned marina that's adjacent to this. And that marina was initially constructed to be a 100% transient marina. The intent was to operate it connected to the museum and some of the other ideas that were happening. It hasn't been used that way, but I think over the course of time, as the activation continues to grow and there's more demand, we'll have the ability to infuse more transient day use and weekend use into that existing infrastructure as well.
Well, I was thinking of, picnic tables I saw down there. And it'd be nice to be able to just come up and tie up and take advantage of picnic tables and perhaps the restrooms. If you're starting from Harrisburg, you need to spend a lot of time.
This is about the time you need to stop.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask, are you focusing on the Maumee? Are you looking at focusing on the more tributaries and acquiring property in that area, protect the watershed, et cetera? Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, the question was, this conversation was really focused almost solely on the Maumee River. So the question was, are we thinking about or doing anything on some of the other tributaries? And yes, we are. We have some ideas. And one of the things that, if you go back 6 or 7 years or so ago, we had the Maumee River designated as a state blueway. And at that point in time, part of our effort was just education in terms of getting more people on the river. We wanted more use, so we opened up a kayak livery and started to implement kayak shares just to start to generate some interest in this. And we really think that there's opportunities to do that very same thing on both of the other tributaries. We don't think there'll be a lot of acquisition necessary, and we're certainly in conversations with the county engineer on some opportunities that might be able to support some of the restoration, some of the log jam removal, and some of the resource components associated with those as well.
Because it seems like we need to start connecting the corridors more, all the corridors, and people are still building in floodplains, even after the water crisis. And it seems like we need to focus on protecting those corridors and floodplains.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. In a perfect world, wouldn't it be fun to dump a kayak in at Wildwood and end up essentially in one place? Yes.
Two things. One, the first is just a comment for anybody in the room that was not at the park-in. I think it was maybe 5-6 years ago when we presented to our club on your vision for the Metroparks. I mean, holy crap! What's happening next year is pretty much what you promised 5 years ago. So thank you for bringing that to light. And it's so exciting to be a part of a club that's helped play a role in that through Middle Grounds and through all of our businesses and our investments. So I just wanted to say, if you haven't watched that video, it's on YouTube and it's unbelievable. So it's to date one of my favorite Rotary presentations. This one's a close second, but I like the visionary side. This is too close to reality. Question, I think there's a lot that can be learned about how Metroparks approaches their mission. And so maybe I'm going to butcher your mission a little bit, but essentially your mission is to conserve land. So every time you put a playground, a trail, anything that brings people to it, that is to some extent counterintuitive to your mission. So I'm curious to address kind of how internally you guys balance that, and how going against the mission actually helps you fulfill the mission.
That's actually a really intuitive question, and you don't have to go back very long in our agency's history to know almost everything that I just talked about, all the things in terms of activation that we're now doing would have not occurred, right? So this was an intentional shift in our organization. And it does stem from the fact that we really do, I mean, the way we've reconciled this is we really do believe in the notion of people valuing what they experience. So the more people we can get on the Maumee River or some of the tributaries to actually see some of these areas, right? Like if you've done that paddle from Wildwood out to the Point Place, and you go in through some incredibly dense residential and industrial, but you never know it, right? Because you're in some cases, still relatively pristine natural areas. So firstly, just those experiences help people understand the importance of the conservation aspect of what we do. And we can't do this work without the community support, buy-in, and trust, right? So that was how we repositioned and really thought about our organization and really shifted with that vision statement to be able to really focus on engaging people in these resources. And it's played out. I mean, we've got right now some of the strongest levels of community support that we've ever had before. So that the notion of getting people into these experiences has really paid off. And to your first comment, thank you for that. Those of you that are not aware, Rotary played a hugely important role in getting us to where we are today. So in 2016, we opened Middle Grounds. And if you remember, prior to that, there was a little bit of community contention around this, right? Because Metroparks doesn't do that. Metroparks does big tracts of conservation work out in the Oakland region. What are you doing buying a landfill downtown, right? So we had a lot of persuasion to do to get people to understand we could bring conservation and connect portions of the community that we weren't. And there was some persuasion there, right? At the time, this was quite literally a landfill. And Rotary was one of the earlier believers in that. I think to date that the financial support you contributed, I think to date was still the largest contribution you've ever given. And so we're very thankful for that. You were a huge part of helping us make that happen.
I'm not sure you want to answer this question, but what's the appetite with the collaboration with the city in terms of some of the resources that they might have? And thinking in particular about Ottawa Park, which has some of the greatest resources for outdoor recreation that we have in the area.
Yeah, so our track as an agency is obviously to not get out over our skis. So I will say the city has been more collaborative and a stronger partner on this particular project than we've ever dealt with before. So the mayor, certainly his administration, is all in. I mean, much of the property that we've assembled to make all this happen, the city has given to us. Now, this is a mutually beneficial relationship from that standpoint because some of these properties, like International Park, aren't so much a gift because of their current condition, right? And so this is, I think, really helpful to the city to be able to reduce some of their overhead, but wildly important to us to connect all of this riverfront together. So I will say, really focused on this project. We've done some things like that, as I said earlier. They transitioned the Botanical Gardens to us. So there is certainly an appetite for that, and I won't say that in the future you won't see more of that. We've got some things sort of in the hopper, but again, our risk is trying to take on too much. And one of the things, to Kevin's point, is we launched this commitment several years ago, and we're going to make it happen.
Will we ever see the Chessie Bike Trail expand?
You will. So the easiest parts of that, as you probably know, have already been constructed. So we started at the river and have started going north. We're actually in the process right now, if you can think of Swan Creek Metropark. Swan Creek, we're building a really nice bridge that actually will cross the creek and get you to the corner of Byrne and Arlington, right in front of the medical college. And so we're connecting that in right now while we look for funding to bring the trail north to that section. From that point, it gets really difficult because we've got active railroad. the Gould Junction, which is that main line, I think is 5 or 6 tracks wide, so we're gonna need a pretty good sized bridge to go over that. We are in discussions with using some of the federal infrastructure dollars right now and see if we can play matchmaker to go towards that project. So our partners on that are still very active. We meet still monthly on that initiative through TMACOG. And so the short answer is, yeah, it'll happen. It's just when can we bring in some of those probably most likely federal resources to support the construction of that.
Talk about that trail off of Burn that's being built between the park.
So the trail, and this was another partnership with the city, the trail along Arlington already exists, and that goes from the corner of right at that Burn Road and Arlington intersection. So what we're doing is sort of working in advance of bringing the Chessie Circle Trail north. We're working in advance in bringing connections from Swan Creek, Metropark, and Airport Highway into that same location. And it was a function of timing from a funding perspective. We were able to find funding to support that, but it's part of this larger regional connectivity vision and connecting into the Chessie Circle Trail. Eventually, for those of you that don't know, eventually that trail, why this bridge is so important, connecting Swan Creek into the Chessie Circle Trail will effectively connect Swan Creek Metropark to Wildwood Metropark all the way up on Central Avenue. So what you will see over the course of time is smaller scale projects like this that have a little bit of independent utility, but fit into this bigger long-term regional connectivity framework. And it's the timing of those things is exclusively driven by state and federal funding that we bring in to support them.
Transformational vision. This is a remarkable transformation. When you talk about vision, the transformational vision, I'm just curious about your reflections on how that came together. The leadership aspects, the cultural aspects. When did it start? What were the processes you used to get it started?
Yeah. Did everybody hear the question? So he was asking just about the process to develop this vision. Where did this come from? How did it all get going? And I will say while this property has been discussed in a lot of different ways for decades, there was not, getting to your point, there was no coalescence around how this should all work. And from my standpoint, one of the reasons that is true is because as a community, we were really grappling with the basic question of, should property like this be used for private economic development? As you remember, most of this was slated for private development. There was, over the course of time, I think 5 ribbon cuttings for projects that never came to be. Or should it be used for the public realm and activation and parks and open space and quality of life initiatives? And so, from my perspective, why this hadn't happened sooner is because we were debating as a community, is it this or is it this? And when the paradigm changed was when we all got together and said it doesn't have to be either or. If we do it right, it can be both. And the public investment can set up and support the private investment, and both benefit as a result. And so firstly, the aha moment was when, as a community, we started to get our arms around, we need to work together, we need to pursue this shared interest of activating this riverfront, and if we do that, then the private sector will support and also benefit from it. And I think that was really the moment in time when the civic leaders, the faith leaders, the governmental leaders, really started to look at the private sector, really started to look at it together. That was when it changed. And that all flowed, like I said, many of you were part of that process. That really all flowed from the planning that came from the 22nd Century Committee. And if you look at the plan that was developed, there were really 6 action items. This was one of them. Essentially, that plan has been, by and large, completed now.
I think we're out of time for questions, so let's give Dave another round of applause. Step away. One more thing, Dave. As a thank you for coming out here and hosting us here today as well, we'd like to give you this Rotary tumbler. And then also, we'll be making a pledge to Polio Plus in your name.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
I was also told you're not allowed to leave until at least one of you climbs that wall. So.